Yeah, we're all here to talk about kind of what has happened with the global supply chain and the incredible disruption to getting products to market. Obviously, introduction, my name is Alison Leavitt, Managing Director of the Wine and Spirits Shippers Association. I have been involved in international shipping for virtually my whole life, but since about 1986, and I've done just about everything involved in shipping. I'm also a licensed customs broker, but have, again, been in operations, I've been in sales, I've been in strategic development, but the last 8 years have been running the Wine and Spirits Shippers Association. And again, our key function at the association is to negotiate freight rates for the industry. We were founded back in 1976 by WSWA and NABI. There's so many acronyms in this industry, but those two organizations came together and said there's got to be a better way in terms of negotiating freight and providing services for international shipping. WSSA was born, and since that time we have been performing that function as our #1 pillar. Now, in this slide, it says, negotiate competitive freight rates. This year, that is absolutely not what we are doing. We are negotiating freight rates that will get us on vessels. So any of you who are involved in shipping, and whether it's, via domestic trucks, whether it's international, whether it's export, you have obviously seen your prices go up enormously for shipping, and you've also seen incredible delays and congestion. So kind of the theme of the day is the fact that demand has outstripped supply in the freight world, and how do we deal with that? How do we go forward? What's happening next? Beyond the freight side, as an association, we also get very involved in a couple other industry initiatives, one of them being risk management. We have a massive cargo insurance program that supports about $1 billion worth of product shipped both internationally, domestically, stored in warehouses. And cargo insurance is one of those things that, even though we're not focusing on that today, it does play into the whole supply chain disruption. When you've got cargo sitting in the heat and waiting to get on a transshipment vessel somewhere in Panama, and your especially if it's wine, might be cooking in the heat. Are you covered? What are your risk factors in terms of the risk that happens with this greater disruption? So risk management, one of the other things we do. And the final pillar is this piece, this industry education, advocacy, intel. In the last few years, there's been so much chaos in the industry, between tariff situations and Craft Beverage Modernization Act and COVID, that prior to all of this disruption, we work very, very closely with other industry associations to manage these challenges to the industry. So we work side by side with DISCUS, ACSA, again, NABI, WSWA, Beer Institute, Wine Institute. All of these industry associations are there to serve the beverage alcohol industry, and we all bring different skill sets to the table. For WSSA, it is the logistics and the regulatory angle. That's what we focus on. So let's see if I can keep moving these slides through and holding the mic. Just a little bit more, we've got about 700 members across the globe. 50% of our membership is from outside the USA. We added a lot of members last year. Probably it was a record year for us in terms of new people joining the association, again, primarily because of the challenges facing the industry. We, again, focus on a lot of different projects. In 2021, we have not only focused on this global supply chain disruption, but also on the new data elements under Craft Beverage Modernization, working on the elimination of the 25% tariffs that were levied due to a WTO case, and again, just working together to get the wider industry just aware of all these different issues. So again, what we're here to talk about today, and we do call it the perfect storm. The last year has been incredibly chaotic. Our focus is primarily on international business. And again, prior to 2021, in all reality, the shipping part was really pretty easy. There was always overcapacity. Rates have been so low for so many years. You could ship a container from Le Havre to New York for $1,500. That rate was holding for many, many years. It was, about $1,500 to ship a container from New Zealand or from South America. Again, these incredibly low rates to move product over long distances. So in 2020, the situation was even worse for the ocean carriers. As China shut down in early 2020 and shut down manufacturing, shut down container manufacturing, as well as everything else, And we were sitting in Rome in February doing our annual transatlantic contract negotiations with all of our key carriers from all over Europe for that particular trade lane. We were so naive. We never thought that COVID was going to spread the way it did. We were sitting there just pushing rates downward, saying, look at, China's shut. You need us. We're the ones that are actually giving you volume right now. So it's just amazing then as we went into lockdown and the volumes further were reduced in terms of all of the shipping lines out there in the world, and the fuel was absolutely going into the toilet. We saw fuel futures going into a negative territory for contracts, again, pushing down on rates. You need us, right? There's nobody shipping, rates are low. That was just a year ago. I mean, it gives you this picture of we cannot predict what is going to happen next. And everyone keeps asking, when is this going to end? When is this going to end? I mean, none of us predicted this. None of us, certainly we didn't predict COVID, but we didn't predict this massive disruption. So we started to see the beginning of the problems nearing the end of 2020 on the Trans-Pacific trade lane. Again, everybody's at home. They're starting to buy stuff. People are just buying everything in sight, as you've heard in the news over and over. Consumer goods were going crazy. China was open up again. Goods were flowing in. The import demand was starting on the Trans-Pacific lanes. Again, wine and spirits, we're still going on our merry way. Nothing was really affecting transatlantic or goods coming in from South America, Australia, New Zealand. And even in early 2021, we still didn't see the writing on the wall. We did not see the trickle-down effect yet on this particular sector. But probably it was about February 2021 when things started to really shift. The rates from Asia were going into the six-figure area. So it was just incredible to see what used to be, again, even from Asia, say a $3,000 rate going to $10,000, $12,000, $15,000, $20,000 a container to move one of those boxes from, say, Shanghai into New York. Absolutely out of control. All the carriers wanted to do was to get their empty equipment back to Asia so they could be making this money on that Trans-Pacific lane. So we started seeing equipment problems in Europe, in South America, in the USA. Exporters were getting denied containers because, again, the carriers were preferring to put empty boxes on these ships to get them back to Asia rather than fill them with U.S. products. So whether it was Kentucky bourbon or California wine or U.S. hay or soybeans or almonds, these products were not getting containers. Again, the trickle-down started, and with the rate situation, it started to also trickle down into the beverage alcohol trade lanes. So we again have seen this incredible time of rate increases, equipment shortages, and huge delays in terms of schedules. And the schedule delays have been for many reasons as well. Whether it is the issue with the West Coast ports that have been incredibly congested. Today, we're at over 100 ships anchored outside of LA Long Beach, waiting for berths to get those containers off ships. I think, this is just pictures speak 1,000 words. You see, this is a photo of one of the terminals out in Los Angeles. You can barely, move on these terminals. You cannot move the boxes around. You can, again, the congestion is so phenomenal. What happens is, truckers go in to pick up an import container. They've got an appointment. There's appointment systems at these terminals. Trucker gets there. They say, sorry, that container's in a closed area. That means that either they're reworking the stacks or they don't have enough crew right now to move things around, or there's a vessel coming at berth that they need to adjust so they can offload some containers. That trucker goes away or maybe calls dispatch and gets another container that maybe is in an available area. And so it's incredible, time wasted, power wasted. We can't get enough truck drivers. They're sitting in lines and then they can't even get the container they've come to pick up. So again, that I think I said, that's just one example of what we're up against this year. So I think we've covered again, the history of where we are, how we got to this point with the supply outstripping demand, this need of the carriers to get the empty containers back to Asia instead of where, you guys might need them. No new capacity coming in. Again, we're talking about looking at how long it takes to build a vessel. We lived with overcapacity for so long that there really have not been new vessels being built. And you can't build a vessel overnight. That takes a long time, especially with the size of the vessels that are coming into play. The late ordering of containers certainly didn't help us, with no manufacturing that normally would go into play in the first quarter. So first quarter 2020, when orders would be placed for new containers, that did not happen. Those facilities were shut down. The high rates from Asia said pushing equipment back. And I think the other big issue that we all face in shipping is a lack of visibility. This whole industry is pretty old-fashioned in all reality. Shipping industry for sure, beverage alcohol even more so in some ways in terms of use of EDI, use of blockchain, things like that. If you've ever tried to trace a shipment, whether it's on, unless you're using FedEx or, again, a few of the couriers that really do have excellent tracking visibility, on ocean containers, there's so many people touching that load, from the trucker that picks it up at the distillery or the winery, to when it goes in-gated at the port terminal, to then it's loaded on the ship and then offloaded at a different terminal under a different ownership. Our hope is that blockchain will become the standard for all international shipping, and that there will be a universal platform so that you can have the kind of visibility that we need. We can't even tell, especially when there's a transshipment involved, and a lot of shipments now, if you're coming out of South America, if you've got Chilean wine, and whether it's shipping to New York or the West Coast, those containers are getting loaded onto vessels that are going to many different places, primarily, say, to Europe or to Asia. They stop in, Panama or Manzanillo, Mexico. The ones going to the US are offloaded and put onto another vessel. Trying to get the visibility at those spots is very, very difficult. And the carriers themselves are such a mess. They're so overloaded that they're not keeping their websites updated. They don't even know where the containers are half the time. So we've never really seen anything like this. And it's really hard in our end of it, where we're just getting calls all the time, from our customers, where's my container? Why isn't it on the boat? How could it be sitting there for 2 weeks? Very hard to keep explaining the situation over and over again. So, again, we appreciate anyone listening to this and at least getting an understanding so you know what your vendors are up against. The other, thing that's happening and that you've all seen in the news and we all hear about left and right, any issue right now is creating even more chaos. It used to be with overcapacity, we could live with little incidents. They wouldn't cause these huge disruptions. Things like the vessel getting stuck in the Suez Canal. Fires. The vessels are so huge. I mean, you see how many containers are on there. There's so many fires on vessels right now that they get caught in what's called general average. It's an ancient shipping law where anyone who has cargo on that vessel is held responsible for the safety of the vessel as a whole. We have a bunch of containers on a vessel that had a fire on it going from Europe into Oakland. The fire, it was a small little engine room fire that happened in April. That went into general average. There's still containers sitting on that ship that have not been offloaded. People waiting months because of incidents like that. Weather, storms, tides. The last few weeks in Chile, we had vessel omissions in San Antonio because of super high tides due to weather. Increases the backlog. All those containers scheduled for those vessels just sit there waiting for the next vessel. There's steamship lines that aren't even taking bookings till mid-September because the backlog is so severe. Certainly labor issues between port strikes, which fortunately haven't been that prevalent lately, but COVID issues have been the biggest problem with, obviously, if there's a COVID outbreak, if there's COVID on a vessel, and in general, as you all know, labor shortages for warehouses, distribution. We hear stories all the time of people who just cannot get orders picked at local warehouses here in New Jersey. A 3-week wait to get your orders picked. It used to be a 48-hour turnaround. Can't get enough labor, can't get enough trucks. It's all interconnected, and it's just everything that could go wrong is going wrong. Rail and truck power. Rail right now, there's a 22-mile backup outside of Chicago of rail cars. From the West Coast into Chicago, the railroads stopped moving cargo over the last few weeks, or metered it, meaning they only took a very small amount each day. Pretty hard to clear out 22 miles of backup quickly. So again, I feel like it's bad news on top of bad news. So I think our message here is control what you can control. You cannot control a lot of these factors, and I think both Chris and Monique are going to speak to this individually about their actual business on the ground. Highly regulated business, beverage alcohol. At least get all your ducks in a row if you're shipping. Do what you can in terms of understanding the lead times required, planning for additional costs, adding money for what potentially for demurrage and detention because of these delays that unfortunately, nobody else is going to pay those charges. And work with reliable companies. Try to have great relationships with your forwarders, brokers, truckers, and be a really good customer for those companies too. So they appreciate working with you. They want to help you. You're not the one that is not understanding the situation. All of those things I think will help you succeed in this disrupted time. Just quickly on some good news points. We did get success with permanence of Craft Beverage Modernization Act at the end of 2020. That was an incredible achievement. And with all the disruption and chaos, I worked really closely with a lot of the associations. We were talking to House Ways and Means Committee every day. These are staffers in a government that you think, nothing was working in our government at that time, but they got this done. They got the language changed. They took the input from the trade. If you don't know about CBMA, you should. Happy to talk about that anytime to anyone. We got the 5-year suspension of retaliatory tariffs. We have a new USTR, Catherine Tai, and the Biden administration taking a very moderate approach to trade. All of those are good. We had a little more stability in Q3 on freight rates in general on the international side. They were high, but they were more stable. Q4, we're going to see more increases, so there will be a little more bad news coming down the pike. But again, we got to try to find these glimmers of hope. And then be patient. Shipping is cyclical. This will end. Consumer goods are, they're continuing to boom, but people are now spending money on travel again, on restaurants, on bars. That is shifting away from consumer spending. That will help slow down this massive demand. And, we will live through this, and it will not last forever. I'm going to give a prediction of mid-2022 in terms of kind of seeing us normalize a bit. We'll see. But thank you so much. Covered a lot in a short period of time, and handing it off to Chris next.